As a mom, you're like, oh, her period is coming. I know it. And sure enough, it's all of these networks turning on so she can make hormone and create a roller coaster. Well, now we're turning the networks off, but it's not like a switch. It's a 6 to 10 year process as we're pulling all the networks off, getting you off that roller coaster, creating new roller coasters, or just flatlining completely. And this is why women feel the way they do, because these hormones have for a long time only been taught that they're ovarian. They're only ovarian. They only have to do with pregnancy and reproduction. What we forgot to teach was they actually impact all 12 systems of the body. If you think of like your cardiovascular system, your immune system, your neurologic system, your skin system, all those systems, you have hormone receptors in all of them. This is why you may get weird symptoms you weren't expecting, like burning tongue, right? Like all of a sudden you're breaking out again as if you were back in puberty, or all of a sudden you're noticing that you have a lot of balance issues, or all of a sudden you get hot flashes, or all of a sudden you're super fatigued. And these symptoms can stay for a while and then leave. They can rotate, come and go. It's also why your symptoms might be different than my symptoms. I'm 48. I'll actually be 48 in a week, 2 weeks. And so what I notice, when I talk to women about symptoms, it's none of it's wrong. It's just whatever system is being affected at that moment.
That makes sense. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke, and unfortunately, Dr. Lynn is not with us today, but I'm super excited to introduce all of you to an amazing guest. Her name is Dr. Carrie Jones, and Carrie, Dr. Jones, Dr. Carrie, what do you prefer as we
Carrie.
talk?
Very informal.
I am too, so great. I just have to say, I'm going to read through some of your things, but I'm so excited to dig in because you have quite, wow, you're really amazing what you've been able to accomplish here. Carrie is an ND, an FABNE, MPH, and MSCP. She's internationally recognized speaker, consultant, author, podcaster, and educator on the topics of women's health with over 20 years in the industry, which is, I'm so excited to talk about this. Dubbed the Queen of Hormones. Very cool. Dr. Jones is a naturopathic physician who did her 2-year residency focused on women's health and endocrinology. She is currently, I could go on and on. We could be here for another 30 minutes talking about everything that you've done. Medical director, certified practitioner, so many amazing things. I see Dutch test here, which I'm excited about too, because I know how important that is. Currently, she co-hosts the highly popular show, the Root Cause Medicine podcast. It has over 10 million downloads. And so let's jump in. Unless I missed something that you want me to mention about you. It speaks for itself. You're amazing.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. I'm honestly honored to be here and talk all about hormones because it's my passion and it needs to be everybody else's passion too, I think.
I 100% agree. Like, I could not agree more. And thank you so much for joining me for the conversation. So at Life After Kids, our community is kind of what the name says. We're all moms for the most part that are like sending our kids off, so we're dealing with a lot of things, but Dr. Lynn and I call it the perfect storm because we're dealing with like, oh my gosh, my kids are leaving. Who am I now? Looking for like a new set of purpose. We're also dealing with the age of our kids, the passage of time in our own age, and then throw the hormone mess into it. Yeah. You've got what we call the perfect storm. And so I think that, it's easy for us, and I would love for you to speak to this a bit more. It's easy for us, or for me, and I think for a lot of women / moms to think that they're feeling crummy or a little down or maybe even anxious or whatever it is, just because like they're saying goodbye to their kids leaving, or they're like looking for new, like there's so many stresses, right? Totally. So many transitions during this time. And all of that can wreak havoc on us emotionally and physically. But if we don't pay attention to our hormones and what they're doing, because at the end of the day, that could be, and I've seen it in my own life, the root cause of why you're feeling so down or so moody or so anxious or so exhausted or whatever it is that you're feeling. So, okay, I'll shut up and I'll let you take it.
It's almost like having the rug, either quickly pulled out from under you or kind of pulled out from under you. One of the analogies I use is a trampoline. So when you are younger in mom life and your hormones are usually pretty consistent, you bounce on the trampoline, you hit stressors with your family, your kids, life, whatever, and then you bounce back up. You have this great inherent built-in support system of your hormones every single cycle. I'm not saying your cycles are perfect or your hormones are perfect, but what happens is women start to get over 40 and start to get into perimenopause, that all the same things are happening. Big transitionings are happening. You know, your kids are going off, graduating from high school, going to college, going into high school. Parents are aging. If you have a career, you're usually at the top of your career, or maybe even starting a new career. You've decided, I'm not doing what I did when I was younger. I'm transitioning. But then you're like, why is it so much harder? Why can't I sleep? Why am I so tired? Why do I feel like the littlest stress sets me off when it didn't used to be? I used to be so resilient. And these hormones really start shifting. So now our trampoline that we'd bounce off of is becoming threadbare. So now we hit the ground as opposed to bouncing up like we normally would. Now our foot pokes through, right? And it's just not as stable and bouncy and resilient as easy as it used to be. But because none of us were taught this, we just think, oh, it must be stress. Oh, it must be this one situation. It must be because, you know, whatever it is. Nobody has said yes and. Yes, and you are losing the hormones that were truly helping you feel like yourself, balanced in your head, balanced in your body, however that looks. And so by understanding this, like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. It's like, no, you're not crazy. These hormones are truly fluctuating. They're changing. And if you remember what it was like when you went through puberty, you remember what it was like when your kids went through puberty, perimenopause is when we back out of it. So it is, you know, it's several years, and it's kind of the chaos of like when you went through puberty. You just go in reverse.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, really, I speaking from experience in my own life, not to mention like other women that I've worked with, it is chaos is the right word for it. And I am going to be 50 next year, but I went like I'm almost, I mean, it's like maybe TMI, but just to keep the conversation real, like I'll be in August, I'll be a year without having cycled,
Yeah.
which is very early for most women. But also, I think it's important to mention because when I was really struggling, and I mean, I struggled for a good 5 years at least, if not 7. And I was trying to talk to docs and healthcare providers, and they poo-pooed me and said I was too young to be dealing with it. Well, it turns out that my grandmother was done at 37 and my mom at 43. I'm not saying that's okay. Maybe they could have done other things to extend it, but I'm saying that I have this family history of the women in my bloodline do things a little earlier, and we're all different. Yeah. So I think to put someone in a cookie cutter or poo-poo, like, I think that's one of the biggest things is like, it's not, if you're noticing things earlier, like nobody fits into a box. Would you agree?
Nobody
like
reads the manual. Like we see it online, you know, like the average, everything's average. The average age
Yeah.
a woman crosses through menopause, which is when the 12th month, once you go 12 consecutive months, no period, you walk through the doorway of menopause. But the average age is 51 to 52, and the average length of perimenopause is 6 to 10 years. So for some women, that is in their late 30s, early 40s. And for others, it's in their mid to late 50s. I mean, I absolutely have had women say to me, I'm old. I'm 55 and still getting regular periods. I'm like, right, you're just on the other end of the average. And then I've had women go, 42, and I'm already starting to notice. I'm already having these symptoms. My period is already starting to act weird. I'm like, I'm not saying it's fair or fun at all. I'm
Yeah.
just saying there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with you. Now, one of the things I do like to point out is that I don't want to blame everything on perimenopause. For example, I would hate to miss a thyroid problem. I would hate to miss like a B12 deficiency or iron anemia. Like I would hate to miss something else, and you or your doctor just blows it off and says, "Well, you're that age, you're perimenopausal now. That's what happens." And God forbid this whole time you're like have no iron. Like no wonder you're tired. So I do want to make sure, like when we're having this conversation, that we go into workup, we go into blood work, we go into other things that overlap symptoms, but also acknowledging absolutely the chaos of perimenopause. That's exhausting. Our human body likes certainty, and women work on a 28-day-ish cycle, right? We have a circadian rhythm, which is our cortisol cycle. That's every 24 hours. Cortisol goes up, cortisol goes down. Melatonin comes up, melatonin goes down. So we have like a sun and moon. And then if you still get your period, in theory, you're like on a monthly cycle. So we have these 2 cycles that we work with. And when it goes off the rails and the body's not ready for that, the body's like, wait a minute, hold on. Where did that go? Where did that rhythm go? Where did that cycle go? It can make us feel really just uneasy. We don't like uncertainty. It makes us feel anxious. It triggers our nervous system. And so by just understanding some of these basic concepts of what happens in perimenopause, I think can really infuse a breath of fresh air or just a calming nervous system breath for women to go, oh, that's why I feel that way. That's what's going on. That's overlaid everything else happening. This is why I don't feel as resistant or resilient, as I used to. I'm like, I know. Nope, you're not crazy. Yes, it is hormonal.
Oh, that's so good. And I love that you mentioned, like, let's do some other testing too and look at fully what's going on, because it's also not okay to be told. And I've been told this too, and I'm sure many other people listening have, is like, oh, it's just your hormones. It'll be fine. You just have to get through it. When A, even if it is your hormones, you don't necessarily have to just get through it. But B, it might not just be your hormones. It could be a simple thing. Like, an example for me is anxiety has been an issue for me, and part of my problem was lack of B12, which, like, if you're lacking in B12 and your good B vitamins, that's can create havoc with racing thoughts, anxiety, all of these things, right?
Yeah.
But I think what you said is super important and will be very helpful to allow, when women can understand what's happening and we're empowered to take ownership of our own body and know what's happening. I think regardless of what we do on the other side of it, just understanding what is happening is so empowering. And I know it was for me, because I had dealt with anxiety before perimenopause. And when perimenopause started, man, I went off it was, we don't have to, this is not like the Brooke show right now, but just to anybody that's listening, like, that all got worse. And it does happen for some women. Some women I've talked to never had anxiety in their life, and then all of a sudden they hit perimenopause and they're like, what's going on? I'm like,
Yeah.
So talk through, maybe I think a good starting point is to talk through, like, what exactly is going on in our bodies.
Yeah. WTF.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay. So when you're in your cycling years, having babies or not having babies, you have all sorts of follicles in your ovaries, and the follicles are the thing that hold the egg, and they have cells on them that make hormones, and they get stimulated depending on where you are in your cycle to make certain types of hormone. Some parts of your cycle you make estrogens, some parts of your cycle you make progesterone, you can make testosterone out of these cells, and it's pretty consistent. Think of it like a set in place roller coaster. We have hormones go up, it goes down, we get the loop-de-loo, that's ovulation where you release the egg. Then they go up and then they go down again. And guess what? We start the ride over the next month, assuming you have a regular cycle. Now, as we start to lose these follicles, as they start to go away as we get older, then we have less consistency in the ability for our brain to talk to our ovaries, to these cells, and say, hey, make a hormone. Go on the roller coaster track like you've always been these last several decades. Do the thing. And instead, the ovaries start to go, maybe, I don't know. We'll see how I feel. Usually what women start to notice first is the hormone known as progesterone declines first. Progesterone is only made after ovulation. So you release an egg and you make progesterone. It's calming, it's soothing, it helps our periods, it's progestation, it's the hormone you want for pregnancy back in the day. But when you ovulate, there has to be a strong signal of release the egg and make a boatload of progesterone. As we get older, that signal declines. So you still might release the egg, but instead of going for like a level 10 of progesterone, maybe you're like a level 4. And so you may be confused going, I still ovulate. I feel it. I have all the symptoms, or I'm tracking. Why would I have all these symptoms? Because the signal isn't what it used to be. Or you just don't ovulate. Some women are like, well, I used to feel it, or I used to test, in the fertility days, I knew I was ovulating, and now I don't really get that anymore. I'm like, yeah, progesterone. So that's the first thing to decline. So now we don't feel calm. We don't have great periods. We're not sleeping that well, because that's all the things progesterone helps. As we move through the perimenopausal journey, we start to skip cycles. Our cycles start to get longer, then they get closer together. That's going to mess with estrogen next. And now estrogen's on its own wild roller coaster. It like completely derailed, got on its own track. It doesn't really know what it's doing. And over time, everything settles down to the bottom. So when we're on this wild track in the middle, we feel it. We have symptoms that come and go. We have symptoms in all areas of our body we didn't even think about, like itchy ears, or like noises are too loud, or skin changes, or headaches, or anxiety. Like we have all sorts of things that can happen. And then eventually, no period for 12 months. Everything's nice and low, and you're considered menopausal. And then the next day, you're postmenopausal, and you are postmenopausal from month 13, no period, for the rest of your life. So you can see how, when you think of puberty, all of this was starting. So women were like, okay, they're watching their prepubescent girls start to develop, start to have mood swings, start to get breast buds, all the things. And then you're like, as a mom, you're like, oh, her period is coming. I know it. And sure enough, it's all of these networks turning on so she can make hormone and create a roller coaster. Well, now we're turning the networks off, but it's not like a switch. It's a 6 to 10 year process as we're pulling all the networks off, getting you off that roller coaster, creating new roller coasters, or just flatlining completely. And this is why women feel the way they do, because these hormones have for a long time only been taught that they're ovarian. They're only ovarian. They only have to do with pregnancy and reproduction. What we forgot to teach was they actually impact all 12 systems of the body. If you think of like your cardiovascular system, your immune system, your neurologic system, your skin system, all those systems, you have hormone receptors in all of them. This is why you may get weird symptoms you weren't expecting, like burning tongue, right? Like all of a sudden you're breaking out again as if you were back in puberty, or all of a sudden you're noticing that you have a lot of balance issues, or all of a sudden you get hot flashes, or all of a sudden you're super fatigued. And these symptoms can stay for a while and then leave. They can rotate, come and go. It's also why your symptoms might be different than my symptoms. I'm 48. I'll actually be 48 in a week, 2 weeks. And so what I notice, when I talk to women about symptoms, it's none of it's wrong. It's just whatever system is being affected at that moment.
That makes sense. And then it's totally understandable why there is such a wide range of symptoms.
Yes.
I mean,
So
I'm glad.
yeah,
Go ahead.
when you look online, they average it. They're like, oh, there's about 30, signs and symptoms: hot flashes, night sweats, like low libido. Like we know all the common things, but when we really dig into the literature, like we really survey women, there's a really great survey by a group called Morphus, and they surveyed over 3,000 women, and a lot of it was very brain related. It was fatigue, it was brain fog, it was headaches, it was all these things. But in general, there were about 100, just over 100 signs and symptoms. And not all of them are common. So for example, itchy ears, or burning tongue, or energy zaps. Women will say, like, I feel like I have energy zaps through my fingers, through my arms, through my legs, etc. They're not very common, but they're common enough that women are going, wait a minute, I have that too. And we realize the onset was when they hit sort of the peak of perimenopause.
Sure. And I would say that they may be more common than we know. It's just that we haven't been talking about this enough.
Yeah.
And I think you can also vouch for saying, like, a lot of any research that's done typically about anything in the past has been mostly focused on men.
Oh my gosh. Up until 1993, we weren't even included in research, which is ridiculous.
Right.
So they would just extrapolate. And even now, when we do research on women, it's tough because of the menstrual cycle or where she is in perimenopause. So if they're trying to, let's say, research a new, pharmaceutical drug, but so they'll just lump men and women together, but they won't be like, oh gosh, when she's at this part of her cycle, it, works differently, or works better, or works worse, just because your system as a woman can function a little differently in the first half, the follicular phase, that it does in the luteal phase. And so these even little tiny minutiae aren't accounted for. We feel them as women. We know we're different through our cycle. If you're still cycling, research isn't totally there yet to account for that.
Yep. So I want to pick your brain and get your take on this, because years ago, when this is a good 20 plus years, when I first started into like nutritional work and focusing more on women, I had been at a lecture where the doctor was talking about the effects that the adrenal glands play. And for those of you listening that don't know, your adrenal glands are your stress handling glands, or like little walnut sized organs that sit on the top of your kidneys. And they release cortisol. They're responsible for your stress response, your sleep weight cycle, a lot of different things, even to some extent, blood sugar regulation. But at any rate, she was talking about how to some extent, when the ovaries start to cool off, the adrenals have to pick up, and maybe they don't produce necessarily estrogen or progesterone, but they're at least producing a lot of the backbones for it. And so if you have a woman now that's going into perimenopause, the ovaries are cooling off, she needs to ask more of the adrenal glands, but she's stressed out beyond belief.
Or burned
And they
out. Yeah.
So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I want women to understand how important, I want to talk about what we can do
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
to
absolutely.
this time better, but some of that to an extent is stress management. So go ahead. I'll let you
Oh,
take it.
huge. I mean, I think everyone can, sort of assume that if you are completely burned out, like if you think, go back to the trampoline analogy, if you're completely burned out, burning the candle at both ends, and then you go through perimenopause, your resiliency is not that great. Your ability to rebound is not going to be that great. So anecdotally, I definitely see the women who are struggling in the stress department and have been for a long time tend to struggle pretty hard in perimenopause as well. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but it's like they get hit doubly hard. They're already
Mhm.
hit where it hurts in managing stress. And then lo and behold, estrogen and progesterone really start to shift as well. And I don't say this like you, I don't say this to shame anyone or to, concern anyone. It's like, oh, but we can be so proactive in it. The adrenal glands are one of the places that we make hormones called androgens. So that's like your testosterone, as an example. You make testosterone in your ovaries, you make testosterone in the adrenals. You can actually make testosterone out and about in what we call the rest of your tissue, your peripheral tissue. So as the ovaries start to shut down, for a lot of women, they also get a decline in testosterone production from there. Not all women get a big decline, but some definitely do. And so the adrenals are still kind of pumping out their testosterone. But if they're also what we call a feedback loop, the feedback loop is where the brain and the adrenals talk, and the feedback loop is like, ooh, gosh, you've been really stressed lately. Like, let's shut it down. Like, let's try to get you to slow down, rest, and heal. Let's try to get you to stop burning the candle at both ends. Then you may notice that testosterone, as well as that cortisol, as well as the other hormones, also starts to decline. Now,
Mhm.
where it gets interesting is testosterone can turn into estrogen. It's called aromatization. It's a magic enzyme that converts testosterone to estradiol. So women can aromatize less. They don't have testosterone like they would hope for. And so they don't get to aromatize into estrogen. Now, women who are postmenopausal don't make a lot of estrogen, but what they do make, they get from these androgen hormones. Well, if you don't have a lot, maybe you've been tested and your doctor said to you, like, oh gosh, you don't really have any testosterone, like you're really low in that department. Know that that also can contribute to maybe lower than expected levels of estrogen at the same time. But again, it goes back to that trampoline. It's like a 1-2 punch, and you just don't have the bounce that you used to if you're burned out and stressed out and have been burning that candle at both ends.
Sure. And I think it's fair to say too that, in um, traditionally, when we look at the body from a health perspective or a medical perspective, we want to take it apart in pieces and
Yeah.
look at, like, oh, we'll look at your ovaries and your uterus over here. We're going to look at your kidneys. We're going to look at these pieces, right? And we see doctors for each of these pieces. But the fact of the matter is, for the body in general, you have to look at it as one for health, and certainly for your hormones and your endocrine glands. And so you mentioned earlier, you can't really, I don't think, look at what's going on with your ovaries through perimenopause and not also look at your adrenal glands and your thyroid, as you suggested,
Yeah.
because they're all so closely talking and interrelated that you really need to see the big scope. Would you agree? I mean, do you see that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even gut health plays a big role, and more research is coming out on that. And the communication between the gut and the brain, the gut and the ovaries, the gut and the immune system, and how all that can change as women go through perimenopause. And to your point, it's like if you have a plant in your house and your plant is not doing well, well, you're not going to maybe look up experts like, I need to figure out just what to do with the leaf. I need to figure out just what to do with the stem. You're not going to separate the plant out in different parts if your plant's not doing well. Most of us are like, oh crap, the plant's not doing well. We look at it as a whole. We start with the soil, we start with water, we look for bugs. Like we do, does it get sunlight? We're thinking of the plant as a whole thing that isn't doing well. Why don't we do the same for people also?
Yeah, it's that can be frustrating. And I think if you're listening, just know like that's an important thing to see yourself as a whole
Yeah.
person and look at every aspect of your health. And I don't say that to overwhelm anyone because it can get overwhelming when you're like, oh gosh, now I got to worry about like the stress management, the gut, and the this and that. But also, if we really want to thrive in this phase of life and be as healthy as possible, we do have to look at the big picture. I think it's so important,
Well,
especially if you want to go ahead.
what's good is that when you do a lot of these foundational things, by default they help everything. So let's take
Mhm.
stress as a perfect example. So cortisol, that the big hormone that is produced by the adrenal glands, it's under an umbrella term called a glucocorticosteroid. So it's a steroid hormone in the cortex of the adrenals, and its primary job, if it had a resume, it would say, I increase glucose in the body. I increase it in circulation. So glucocorticosteroid. So the more cortisol you have, then likely the more glucose you have. So like, okay, we know the more cortisol you have, maybe the more activated your immune system is. We know the more cortisol you have when you're in a fight or flight state. Well, that means you can't really, like, you don't have time to slow down, to rest, to heal, to digest your food, to have sex. Like none of that's of interest because you're in a fight or flight state. So just by listening and thinking, yeah, you know what? They're right. I have been burning the candle at both ends. And as you set boundaries and say no and do things to support your stress, by default, it's going to improve all these systems. By default, your glucose is going to regulate and probably go down. By default, you're going to digest your food better. By default, your immune system's going to calm down. By default, you'll probably sleep better, right? Like all the symptoms we're mentioning, even the heart, when you're stressed out, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up. By default, you'll support your cardiovascular system. So I agree. I don't want people to think like, oh my gosh, now I have to address each of these systems. A lot of the foundations by default will improve all these systems. We just need you to realize that it's all connected. Like the hip bone and the knee bone really are connected.
Right. Well, it goes back to like that when you know better, you do better. And
Yes,
sometimes you just need to understand the why to be empowered to make the changes that you need to make. And
yeah,
I love how you are very, very good at taking a very complex topic like hormones and breaking it down for us to understand better. So I really appreciate that.
absolutely.
Um, let talk about like I guess where would you start like for a woman that's in perimenopause, even if they're in menopause now, wherever they are, and they're looking for like they're listening to us and they're like, oh my gosh, like I need to do something. Maybe she's been blown off by other healthcare providers, or maybe she just hasn't even spoken up for herself. Whatever the case, like what's the starting point for you? Walk us through
Absolutely.
saying what that looks like and where we head to get ourselves healthy.
First and foremost, thankfully, we are in an entire menopausal celebration experience. If anyone spends any minute of time on social media, you'll see it all over. So there's a lot of great education. Just consume it. Take what applies to you and leave the rest. I realize there's a lot of info out there. But the more educated you are, just as you said, like the more empowered you are, the more you learn about this, it just becomes easier to advocate for yourself and then of course to make these changes. So that's first and foremost. Let's get educated. Let's learn about perimenopause or menopause. Number 2, if your practitioner's been blowing you off or they have no idea about hormones, or they're like, hormones cause cancer, we don't, good luck, you just have to suffer through it, then it's time to find a new healthcare practitioner. Just as if you didn't like your pediatrician with your child, you'd find a new pediatrician. Just as if your vet was mean to your dog, you'd find a new vet. If your healthcare practitioner is not meeting your needs, what's the difference? Let's change it. Find a new healthcare practitioner. You can always add to your medical team. It's totally cool. And it's okay to recognize your healthcare practitioner may not be a hormone expert at all. That's not like when I went 2 times ago when I had to see in the medical clinic I go to, I couldn't see my own healthcare practitioner. I had to see somebody else. Mine was on maternity leave. And he was like, ooh, hormones. Yeah, I don't do that. I mean, he was very upfront. I'm like, you're a family physician. He's like, yeah, I don't do that. No, I refer out to that. I'm like, you know what? Kudos to you for understanding and knowing your boundaries. So it's okay to change. Number 3, you're going to want to start with the foundations. Now, people may go, well, what about hormones, Carrie? Can I take hormone therapy? I am a huge fan of hormone therapy. However, hormone therapy like estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, that is not going to change what's at the end of your fork. That is not going to get you off the couch to get you to start building some muscle. That is not going to get you to necessarily say no, set boundaries, and take care of yourself. So we kind of want to look at both as they overlap. We do a lot of foundation work. So right, like what air are you breathing? How are you taking care of yourself? Think of yourself as that houseplant again. You are a houseplant. Are you hydrated? Do you have good soil, right? Do you need some better nutrients? Do you get some sunlight? Have you had fresh air in a while? Are you by a nice window? Are you in a nice house? Are you moving your body? Like these basic things can be really hard. I fully understand it for women because they're so busy in the stage of their life putting everyone else first. That's what they've done for decades at this point. And now they're trying to figure out where they're at and what their purpose and like, do the kids need me? Do the kids not need me? Like, what am I doing here? So working on those foundations, dialing them in is critical right now. You'll probably see on social media things about building muscle, exercise, movement. We lose muscle strength. We increase our risk for what's called sarcopenia, which is muscle loss, and of course, bone loss as we get older. And we don't want to do that. Like we are not going to be that generation anymore. We are going to maintain our muscle or build our muscle. We're going to be strong women so that we don't develop hip fractures or bone loss as best we can. Same goes for nutrition, right? Like we got to dial our nutrition in. What happens is a lot of women go, yeah, I used to be able to skate by. I used to be able to like just sort of, do what I do with eating. And now that I'm perimenopausal, I've noticed I've gained all this weight and I don't know what to do. Like, all right, we have to dial in now. We need enough protein. We need a variety of fruits and vegetables. We need fiber, et cetera, et cetera. And then next, once we have that dialed in or at the same time, let's get evaluated for hormones. Now, some people freak out and go, oh my gosh, I thought hormones cause cancer, or I can't believe you would suggest hormones. At this stage in the game, when it comes to real progesterone and real estradiol, I feel we have a lot of research to show that by going on, at least start with progesterone. A lot of women are like, where do I start? Progesterone's a great one to start with. It's the first hormone to go down. But estradiol is honestly what really helps the world go round for women's bodies. Like, let's get evaluated because that can make a world of difference for you. The foundations can't bring your hormones back, and the hormones can't get you to do the foundations necessarily. So I find that bringing them together really is what's going to optimize a lot of women's health. And we can do it in a slow, stepwise fashion. We can talk all about the education. And it doesn't have to be fast and furious and scary at all. But I do want everyone to be open-minded about all the options that are out there.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I think I think that the face of hormone replacement is definitely changed because the studies that were out there saying that it was really deleterious to your health, we're now seeing that it's actually probably not so deleterious, especially if you are doing things that are bioidentical, meaning it's the hormones are coming from plant as opposed to like from a horse,
right.
a pregnant horse, or synthetically made, right? I think I'm assuming you agree there.
Yeah. What's interesting, yes, and so in the study, the Women's Health Initiative is the study that came out to the news in 2002 that said like, oh my gosh, don't do hormones, it causes cancer, and every woman stopped it across the world. What's interesting though is that there were two parts of the study in this area. They looked at the part of the estrogen that comes from a horse. Believe it or not, it's called Premarin, like from pregnant mare urine. So it is a synthetic estrogen. And then they looked at a progestin together. And so progestin is a synthetic progesterone. And they had another arm of the study. So if you didn't have your uterus, you'd had a hysterectomy, then they did not put you on the progestin. They only put you on the synthetic estrogen, the pregnant mare urine. Well, it turns out the pregnant mare urine estrogen didn't increase the risk of cancer. And they stopped the rest of the study, but they continued that part of the study because they were like, well, dang, there's no increased risk of cancer over here. Let's keep going and see what happens. And on follow-up, they found that pregnant mare urine estrogen still didn't increase the risk of cancer. That it seems the progestin, or even maybe the combination of the two together, was really the problem. So I do want women, I am a big, 100%, I only prescribe the bioidentical hormone, estradiol and progesterone. That's what I do. However, if for some reason some woman is listening and they're on Premarin and they absolutely love it, that's their absolute favorite thing in the world, I'm like, the studies, I'd prefer you be on the other, but the studies are showing Premarin is not as bad as everybody thinks it is. What it can be bad in is that Premarin you swallow, it's a pill. So you swallow the estrogen. When you swallow estrogen, in general, it can be more pro-inflammatory, which we don't want, and it can increase the risk of thicker blood and clotting. So everyone's worried about cancer, and I'm worried about inflammation and cardiovascular disease. So we do have to keep a tight eye on that if you are listening and you are on an estrogen that you swallow, as opposed to a patch or a gel or vaginal, etc. It doesn't have that same pro-inflammatory part of it, and it doesn't have the same blood thickening clot risk part of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for clarifying that and saying that, because I have heard that too.
Mm-hmm.
With regards to risk factors. And so that's a really important distinction there.
And it's really unfortunate because if anyone listening is on hormones, even bioidentical, when you go to your pharmacy, if you get it through a traditional pharmacy, to pick it up, stamped in big letters all over it is this causes cancer. Like they haven't taken that part off. And on the patches and the gel, the topical patch, gel, or vaginal, they haven't taken off the part of this does not increase the risk of thickening blood and blood clots. They sort of just blanketly put these warnings on everything for everyone, no matter what. And that scares a lot of women, understandably, who are like, oh my gosh, I don't want these things. I'm not going to take it. That's really scary. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so nuanced. And thank goodness, experts and researchers and hormone experts, they are lobbying hard, literally lobbying hard to get that warnings taken off or put appropriately where it belongs, not just blanketly put on everything that has estrogen or progesterone in the name. But we're not there yet, sadly.
Yeah. No, I think it's important. And again, I've been using the word empowerment, but it's true and it's so important. And I'm kind of like, for me, I'm not sure. Here I kind of look from the standpoint always of the body knows what to do. The less you do to mess with it, the better. We're designed to go through menopause and have our hormones drop. So I'm not sure that I'm just being real.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, up till now, and while I was going through perimenopause, I was like, I just got to my mindset was I got it. And my mother was on me. Like, your body knows what to do. Just suck it up. When you get to the other side, you're going to feel better. La, la, la. I'm still toying around with this because of all the research and talking to experts like you. Like, I don't know. I have worked my tail off to put all of those baseline foundational things that you've said into place. And I am diligent about it. I mean, day in and day out. And so I've gotten myself to a place where I feel pretty good. Yeah. And I don't think that I'll go down the path of hormone replacement. That being said, for the woman who maybe she's doing all the whatever it looks like, let's not criticize people or put the fear into women if they need a different route.
It's the same if somebody needed thyroid hormone, right? Like if somebody is low in thyroid and they're like, heck yeah, I am going on thyroid hormone medication. That's bioidentical, T4, T3. If somebody can't make insulin, like we give them insulin. And so when I agree with you completely. And so I just wanted to point out, like, women are like, oh my gosh, it's not natural. I'm like, well, actually, in a lot of medicine, we are replacing. If somebody has Addison's disease and can't make cortisol, like, we do give them cortisol as a replacement. Now, it is true. All women naturally go through menopause. Absolutely. Whether you haven't had a hysterectomy or if you've had a hysterectomy, then it's pretty immediate. You're menopausal. But how you address it, like, there's no trophy or award for suffering the most, right? There's no trophy or award at all when you come out the other end. And we actually are now researching what happens to women long term. Now that our Gen X's and our millennials, like, now we're getting all this research on them. For example, like the brain, like what happens in the brain? We know women are at a high risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. How much is estrogen related? How much is it blood sugar or chemicals in our environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Same for bones. We know estrogen plays a huge role in the bones. And we know, when we think of the big conditions and diseases we want to prevent as women, We want to prevent cancer as best as possible. We want to prevent cardiometabolic disease, so heart and blood sugar. We want to prevent diseases of frailty, osteoporosis, osteopenia, loss of muscle mass called sarcopenia, breaks and fractures. And we want to prevent neurodegenerative disease, so dementia and Alzheimer's. And there are a multitude of factors and risks that go into each of those 4 categories, but the decline of hormones adds to all of them. So if it fits for you and you're like, I am doing everything that Brooke talked about, and I still feel like absolute crap, I don't want to suffer, don't suffer. Don't suffer. It's totally fine. Why wait?
Absolutely.
There's no trophy. There's no award. You don't get a watch. I wish if I could give out crowns and watches and vacations, like congratulations, you're menopausal, I would, but I'm sadly not in charge of the universe. So
Yeah.
right. We have to figure it out on our own.
Yeah. And it's so important to say that because the years, I mean, there are so many different symptoms, but like if you're a woman that's going through even, it can be really debilitating,
Yeah.
frankly. And I'm not saying that lightly because I had days where I'd have a cycle and I'd stand up and I'd be soaked through all the way to my chair, which is embarrassing. Like,
Yeah.
and if you need to be out in the workforce or doing anything, like the point is there is another way. And I thank you for saying like, there's no word for the person that suffers the most.
Yes.
And even if it was something you chose to do just to get you through to the other side, like whatever that looks like for you, there are safe ways and there are very knowledgeable doctors that can help you through that. Would you agree that you should be tested first before you do anything?
So I am a fan of testing. You don't have to test. There's no test to tell you if you're perimenopausal.
Okay.
So I want to put that first and foremost. If
Yep.
you've had a hysterectomy, like your ovaries have been removed as an example, and you're like, well, I have no idea or excuse me, let me back up. You've had a hysterectomy, but you have your ovaries. That's what I meant to say. So you're like, well, I have ovaries, but I don't know what they're doing. Then we will use testing to determine, have you maybe crossed over into menopause yet? There's a test called FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. But for everybody else who's perimenopausal, there's no actual test for that. We base it based on symptoms, age, and what's going on with your cycle. Now, I am in camp test. There is camp no test. The reason for camp no test is they say, well, your hormones are on a roller coaster. It's hard to pin down where you are. So what's the point? Let's just take your age, your symptoms, and your cycle into account and put you on hormones or do the things. And I'm like, okay, but that often sometimes for some practitioners includes any test. So they're like, well, I don't test, which means they don't even look at thyroid. They won't even look at like insulin. They won't look at B12 or vitamin D or all these other markers. They're just like, oh, I don't test. I just put you on hormones. And I am in camp test, especially if you still are getting regular cycles, because I would just like to have a snapshot where you are. I'd like to know where your testosterone is, which isn't so much cycle related. And for some women, it does decline pretty rapidly with age, but for some women, it doesn't at all. For some women, I want to know, like, do you even still ovulate? Do you make any progesterone? Do you ovulate and don't make much progesterone? Do you not ovulate and make no progesterone? What's your estrogen doing? I'd like to have just an idea and a snapshot, plus all the other markers that can change as women get older, like thyroid, like cholesterol panel, like glucose and insulin. Sadly, all of that can get worse as we go through this transition, and I, for one, don't want to miss it. So I am camp test. Now, I don't test for somebody who's wildly irregular. If somebody's listening to this going, I have no idea when my period comes, it is a shot in the dark. I don't test estrogen and progesterone on you, but I will test everything else. Thyroid, cholesterol, vitamin D, B12, iron, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Testosterone. But I don't test estrogen and progesterone. So I am very strategic in how I test. I spent almost a decade in the testing world, so I understand I have a lot more knowledge than the average person. But yeah, that's how I look at testing.
Yeah, I think that especially if you're still cycling in some way, even if it's erratic, to your point, depending on the day of the week, you're not going to get a sound scope of what your hormones look like because they're not status quo.
Yeah.
So
they are not status quo, roller coaster. But we can pinpoint if you have regular cycles still, which is not uncommon in early perimenopause, then I know where you are in your roller coaster. So I can say, all right, let's aim for after ovulation in the luteal phase, somewhere around day 20. Like I can be very specific to, based on what you tell me about your cycle and what I'm looking for. Now, if somebody's listening, like you're a great example, you have 2 more months to go before you're menopausal. So it means you haven't had a period in 10 months. So I would totally test your hormones. Let's say you're like, I'm really interested You haven't had high, medium levels at all of estrogen or progesterone in several months. So I could say, well, you can test anytime because you're not having a cycle. And let's just see how, sort of quote unquote low that you are and what we're looking for, what we're looking at. When we look at the data right now, the only lab level we have is bone data, meaning if you go on estrogen and I draw your blood for estrogen, estradiol, then if you're on average, if you're above what's called 60, so estradiol is measured in picograms per ml. So if you're above 60 picograms per ml, research shows that you're probably have a very reduced risk of the frailty part, the osteoporosis, osteopenia. We don't have a blood level for like your heart. We don't have a blood level for your brain. I'm hoping with the research we have coming that we'll start to understand if women are on estrogen therapy and they're at this certain level, it reduces the risk of like in the brain, women, the decline in estrogen can lead to a decline in our hippocampal volume. The hippocampus are memories. And obviously with women having increased risk for dementia and Alzheimer's, I'd like to know what that blood level is if we can. If you stay above this blood level, you're less likely to lose the hippocampus. If you stay above this blood level, you're less likely to develop whatever, high triglycerides and high cholesterol. But we're not there yet. All we have is bone data. So when it comes to testing on hormones, it is a little nuanced if you're in camp test.
So that's so interesting because what I think I hear you saying, and this is kind of like right where I am too, but what I think I hear you saying is right now we can test for a menopausal woman, right? We can test and see where her estrogen and progesterone are. And if she's not doing replacement therapy, it's going to be at a low level because they're in menopause.
Correct.
But we are at the point where we can look at that test and say, oh, it's low, but it's even lower than it should be for things like bone density and frailty. So you might be somebody, even if you feel good, still want to do a little bit of hormone replacement till we get you back to this level and know that your bones are protected.
Yeah.
And we're headed down the path of getting there, hopefully, for being able to see that for the brain and for the heart, which is that's my biggest thing I will tell you right now is I'm going down the path still of working on my gut health.
Yeah.
And my foundational things. And I have talked to my doctor and said, look, I want to get all this cleaned up first, see how I feel on the other end. And then let's check my bone density. Let's check these other things. And I'm going to consider hormone replacement, not because I'm necessarily symptomatic. So I've gone through all the perimenopausal stuff, but just because I know it is very protective for your brain, for your heart, and for your bones, right? And so I want to do everything I can for longevity.
And a lot of those things you can't feel. And I think that's what really throws women. They'll go, well, I don't have hot flashes and night sweats. And then they'll get their blood drawn and their cholesterol suddenly went through the roof. Or they'll go, I don't have hot flashes and night sweats, or I like all those symptoms are better. But then they go get a bone density, a DEXA scan, and it's like, oops, they're totally osteoporotic or osteopenic. So these silent symptoms have been creeping along all that time, but we've been paying attention to the loud symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats, I can't sleep, I'm rageful, my ears itch, my vagina's dry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, there are definitely a lot of, I'm pro-hormone, and there are a lot of practitioners who would be like, don't wait. But I also fully respect you're a sovereign being. It's your decision on hormones. I just want you educated, which you are. And that's why you have this podcast, to educate everybody so that they can listen and go, that's cool. I'm fully educated now and I'm still going to wait. And that's fine. I support you. You do you. Absolutely. But what I don't like is when people go, hormones cause cancer. Like, I'm not going to do hormones. They're not educated. They have a lot of fear, understandably. Or their doctor misleads them. Well, there's nothing you can do. I'm like, no, there's a lot. What? No, there's a ton you can do. I will say, since you mentioned gut health, and I really dove into this research. So when estrogen and progesterone decline, we just can't win. When they decline, they play a big role in our GI tract. So I just want to point this out to you that we have a mucin layer in our intestines, which is kind of like a snotty layer through the whole intestines that's meant to trap bad things so that our immune system can come take care of it. When we have a decline in estrogen and progesterone, we have a couple things go wrong. One, that mucin layer doesn't turn over like it should. It can get thinner and patchy. So we're more at risk for like bacteria and viruses and, food particles that we don't want can slip through to the other side. We also, throughout our entire intestinal tract, have what's called a tight junction. Think of it like a gate. And it's the gate from inside your intestine to outside your bloodstream where your immune system is. So if you eat, you're an example, you take your B12 supplement, you swallow it, it goes down to your intestines. You want your tight junction gate to go, ooh, B12, I like you, pulls it through and allows it into the bloodstream. We don't want you to pull through mold or a virus or a bacteria that would maybe make you sick. So we want a tight junction. Like, no, you can't come in here. What happens though is estrogen and progesterone decline is that those gates get rickety and they start to open for anything. And this is why a lot of women, it's something like 42% of women experience upper intestinal symptoms, GERD, reflux, heartburn. 38% experience lower, so diarrhea, gas, bloating, constipation, etc. Not necessarily because there's something like they've done to their microbiome, but because the hormones themselves, the decline in estrogen and progesterone, negatively shift the microbiome, affect the mucin layer, loosen the gates, and now she has all these symptoms. So I do want you to know about all this because I would hate for you to spend years going after your gut health thinking you have candida or you have like all these things. You're like, I just keep doing gut cleanses. I keep doing gut protocols. It's not getting better. And potentially the decline, the loss of estrogen and progesterone is the big player for you.
That's such, I'm glad you said that for me, selfishly, but also
of course.
It's just so important. It honestly is important that like you can't, there are just so many different things that you need to look at when it comes to your health. And
Yes.
as women, hormones is just such a big thing. And I definitely don't want anyone listening to walk away from this conversation thinking that I'm like against hormone replacement, because honestly, if I could go back to where I was 7 years ago, 5 years ago, like I look at that woman now going, why did you do that to yourself? Why didn't you? There was a better way. I mean, so I think that every woman should be empowered to make their own decision, but I definitely don't discount the impact and wonder what it would have looked like had I done things differently now.
You know, it's interesting. So I had the pleasure of talking with Dr. Lisa Mosconi. So she is a female brain researcher, one of the very few. And she wrote the book Menopause Brain and XX Brain, which I highly recommend Menopause Brain if you're perimenopausal or menopausal. So I was talking to her and she was saying that in her research and observation, that when the longer women go without estrogen, so the more cycles they start skipping, she's like, that's the less estrogen up to the brain, which is, of course, the thing she studies. So she was really pretty clear. She's like, I don't think if you're going to do hormones, you shouldn't wait 12 months, 15 months, 24 months to decide, especially because of what we know about the brain. She's like, just be aware the longer you go, then that's the longer without. Now she's still studying it, but she had that observation of why would we wait? Because the changes of the brain are already happening. Now, I'm going to extrapolate that to say, well, if it's crap, if I'm having changes in the brain, then I'm probably having changes in my bones or changes in my gut or changes in my, heart markers, etc. So if you are listening to this thinking, did I miss the boat? No, the Menopause Society guidelines have actually said you can go on hormones kind of at any age. You just have to get, assessed and worked up, make sure you don't have any risk factors. However, the biggest, strongest, bestest impact we know is in the early stage, like within the first, 5 to 10, like that 10-year transition is probably your best bet. And it was nice to hear a brain researcher go, we have more research to do, but just be aware, like once if you choose not to, or you can't, which I understand a lot of women can't do estrogen, that we have to work extra hard, like on the brain or on the gut or on the bones. Yeah. And not everybody has that ability, time, finances, etc. So I just like everyone to have all the options and then they can decide.
Yeah, that's so good. And I actually read the XX Brain and it was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wrote down Menopausal Brain. I'm going to purchase that too. And I'll link it in the show notes, ladies, if you're listening, because she is, and I have been hearing a lot that anytime you do, I'm glad you brought that up. Hormone replacement, it's effective, but the sooner you start, wherever your journey is with perimenopause and menopause, the better and the more protective it is, which only makes sense because you don't want to get to a place of decline. Like if you can stop it sooner.
Totally. Absolutely. And the same applies for foundations. You know, like if somebody's in their 30s listening to this and they're like, well, when should I start with the foundations? Now. Don't wait until you're 45 and totally burnt out. Now. The best time is now. But the same applies as somebody listening to this is 55 or 60 going, oh man, I haven't done any of these things. The time is now. Like, like, why not start now? You can do it. You have decades left. Let's make them great.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't we do whatever we can to be? I love when you said earlier, like, we don't need to live that way anymore. We don't need to have the muscle wasting and I mean, obviously aging is a part of life, but we can also choose to do it really well. Yes. And, we'll be living well into our 80s and beyond and be healthy and active and feeling really good in our bodies. I think that's the end goal for me anyway.
Yeah. Health span, right? Health span versus lifespan. Lifespan is how long you're going to live. Health span is how healthy you're going to do it. How mobile are you? How cognizant are you? All those things.
100%. Yeah. Man, I appreciate you so much. And I really appreciate, we just met and I feel like I've known you and I feel like I may be calling you to work with you. And I feel like we need to have you back on to just
I would love that.
Pick that intelligent little brain of yours.
I would love that. Yes, please. Absolutely. This has been such a joy.
Hey, is there anything we missed or anything really important that you want the women/moms that are listening to know?
One of the things, so speaking of brain, and because I just said the word joy, so remember these hormones impact all your neurotransmitters. And I think what can happen, part of the overwhelm, part of the burnout, part of the stress, and you're beating yourself up. You're thinking it's you must be something I'm doing wrong. It must be something I'm overextending. I have to mindset shift my way out of this. Those hormones impact all the hormones in the brain. So think of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, your bonding connection hormone, like GABA, which is our inhibitory or brake system to slow things down. It impacts all of those. So when women say to me, I don't have joy anymore, I'm not feeling connected, I don't want to, I want to fight everyone, but then I want to cry, I feel crazy. I'm like, I know because these hormones are literally have a direct impact on all of these. So on top of everything else we talked about, like finding joy again, I understand can feel frustrating and hard, but to find that joy also puts you in that rest and digest. It helps support the healthy side of your nervous system. So really embracing this whole transition, it can feel like complete horrible chaos. But when you come through on the other side, just as Brooke said, like it can be awesome. You're going to find out, what you tolerate and what you don't. You usually don't put up with relationships, friendships, jobs, things that you used to people please and tolerate. Like that all goes. You're more authentic in who you are. A lot of women find a whole second calling, maybe even a third calling. Like it can be really wonderful out the other side, but that part isn't talked about very often because we feel like crap as we're going through it. So I want to you to remember that part too. Like you're becoming this whole new being, just like when you went through puberty, you became a teenager. Like you're becoming this postmenopausal goddess, and like remember that.
Oh, that is so good, and it's so important because we talk so much about that piece of who are you going to be now? What do you want to do? Mm-hmm. But we can absolutely not. I preach this to people all the time. Like you can't just go after your new purpose and write your goals and do your thing and get your core values and your mindset. Yes, all of that is important. But if you're struggling physically, your hormones are whacked or your whatever, your gut, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to pursue what you want to do and find the joy that you want.
Yep.
Without, you can't, it's not either or, it's got to be both.
Yep.
It's got to be all of it. So I'm so for saying that. It's an and, exactly. It's and. Okay, would you be okay with doing like 3 just fun rapid fire questions before we end?
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
So, question, are you a mom? I didn't even ask that.
I have 2 stepkids. Yeah. So my stepkids are 23 and almost 26.
Okay. So this question, otherwise we'd skip over the question. It's no big deal, but I was just going to ask you from that frame of reference, do you have a tip for us moms dealing with older kids, adult kids, or kids on their way out of the house, like in how you deal with them or connect or how you help parent them?
Oh my goodness.
Put me
So
on the spot.
I have an interesting right perspective because it's from a stepmom, bonus mom point of view as opposed to their mom. And I've been with them since they were young, so saw them through puberty and then through high school and like out of the house and all those things. And what's great for me is that they're really open and curious. And because I'm a women's health doctor, like they have felt super comfortable to ask me all sorts of questions throughout all of their life. And I have found that just being really open and honest with them, even if I wasn't a doctor, really open and honest with them, it's going to make the other generations, the younger generations, better at the whole hormone thing. The I was asked the other day, does your husband know about perimenopause? And I was like, well, he does now, but he didn't back then. Whereas my two stepkids, like they know a lot about hormones and autoimmune and period stuff and food allergy. Like they know a lot because, well, all the moms involved are very active in talking about it, which is great. But I want women to like have those conversations so that when their kids grow up, they're educated about it also.
That's huge. I wish I had been talking more about that with my mom. A lot of the stuff she kept to herself that she dealt with.
Yeah, they all
Um,
did. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and our kids can handle that stuff, and I think it is important to talk to them about whatever it is and share what's happening so they know what's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was really good
it's
advice.
not taboo. I think a lot of people, like our moms and grandmothers, thought it was taboo. It's just what you had to suffer through and you did it in silence. And it's not taboo. And 50% of the population are women, and they need to know, and then the other percent need to know to support the women in their life.
Yeah. No, it's true. And that's why I try to be super open about what I've been through with the anxiety attacks and the bleeding. As I said, nobody wants to talk about this stuff. And is it embarrassing? Yeah, a little. But the more we keep it to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
the more that none of us know that this is all. I'm not going to say that it's normal because it's not normal. If
Yeah.
our hormones are regulated, it wouldn't be happening, but it's common and there is a better way. And you're not, if you're hearing this, like you're not the only one dealing with this stuff. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or you're weak or you're sick or anything like that.
Right.
It's just that you need a little bit of TLC to your body and potentially your hormones. So
And
thank
hormone
you.
imbalance can happen at any age, right? We all have teenagers with major hormone imbalance. We have 20-year-olds with major hormone imbalance. I mean, any age. It doesn't mean they're perimenopausal, but it does mean we can help them.
Absolutely. So good. Second question. What's your favorite tip? We talked about how important stress management is. What's your favorite thing to do for stress management?
Mine is laughter.
Oh, that's so good.
I have a saying as you above me. It says healing happens at joy, and part of that includes laughter. So even if it's just funny memes back and forth to my friends or on social media or watching funny things, just a couple minutes of laughter like really helps me quite a bit. Or being funny, like being able to laugh like this with us, I found has been huge because sometimes, again, if you're in the thick of perimenopause and you feel like crap, like you're like, I'm not laughing, this isn't funny. But then I see funny perimenopause memes and I'm like, okay, that's funny. you know, yes, it
Yeah.
can. We have to laugh with the roller coaster.
That was so good. And it's actually physiologically when you're laughing, it stimulates the part of your nervous system that brings you into rest and digest,
Yeah.
stimulates your parasympathetic system. So yeah, I'm all for a stupid, 20-minute, 30-minute sitcom, especially towards the end of my day to just chill out and laugh a little bit. And so
Decompress.
I could agree with you more. Yeah. Um, Last question, and maybe you gave us a good answer already, but what book are you reading right now that you love, or something that you could pass on to us women? You mentioned XX brain and menopausal brain.
Menopause
Anything?
Brain was absolutely one of my favorites. Big fan of that. There are a lot of menopause books out there being published. So, for example, Mary Claire Haver, Kelly Casperson, Cynthia Thurlow, Esther Bloom. There are a number of great resources. In fact, a lot of these pink books are on hormones on either side of me if you're watching a video. But find somebody that resonates with you in their writing style and read it. Follow their blog articles, their Substack, their Instagram, and get educated. And I've read all of these because even as a hormone doctor, I want to read their perspective also. What are they doing? How do they think about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important too. And I said in the very beginning, take what applies to you and leave the rest. Because we don't have a hard and fast rule. They're guidelines. Guidelines aren't concrete. So, and you're an individual.
Right. Dr. Lynn says that all the time. Take what applies to you. Doesn't mean everything. If one thing turns you off, doesn't mean it's all bad. Keep an open mind and
Yeah.
take what applies to you. It's really that's really good. You mentioned one of those authors that I've read, Esther Bloom. One of the authors is of the new menopause book, correct? I think the
That's
first one
Mary
you
Claire
mentioned.
Haver. Yep, Mary Claire
Yeah.
Haver. There's another Lindsay Berkson. She has several books as well that are quite good. Lindsay's amazing. She's in her 70s and sharp as a tack, funny as hell. And so she's one of my favorites also to listen and learn from because she'll tell you how it is and she's thriving. So I'm like, I want to be like you when I grow up.
Well, we say like, and I think this comes from Tony Robbins, success leaves clues.
Yes.
So like,
yes.
in other words, if I see a woman that's in her 70s or 80s and she's rocking it, I'm like, okay, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
Like, what have you done to get here, right?
Yeah, 100%. She kayaks all the time, works out, does her foundations. I'm like, okay, it works.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it works, I'm like, oh, it works. She's
Amazing.
speaking her, and a lot of the authors that I mentioned, like they speak their truth, follow their truth, and it's working. They're all look great.
It's amazing. And you do as well, by the way. I can't believe
you.
what'd you say you're 48?
I'll be 48 in 2 weeks. Yeah.
That blows I mean,
thanks.
I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm like, I figured you were like early 40s or less. You look incredible. So whatever
Thanks.
you're doing,
I'll take it. Yeah.
For real. Again, I just thank you. I really appreciate you. I appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate you helping to empower women and just educate around all this hormone stuff that we're all dealing with. I've got your website here. It's Dr. Carrie, Carrie Jones.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if somebody wants to work with you, is that the best place for them to go?
I don't actually see patients at the moment. So it's all, right now, it's all free education. So courses, classes, ebooks, podcasts, all the things. Yeah. I saw patients for almost 15 years and transitioned into education.
But if somebody wants to work with you, meaning get your tools and your...
drcarriejones.com. Everything's there. Absolutely. Yep.
Excellent.
You can also find me on social at Dr. Carrie Jones. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it looks like your Instagram is Dr. Carrie Jones, correct?
Yep.
YouTube is at Dr. Carrie Jones. So you're on we can find you everywhere.
You can find me everywhere. I've even ventured into TikTok. Wish me luck.
We're on TikTok too. It's an interesting animal.
It is an interesting animal. That's a good way to put it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, ladies. Thanks again, Dr. Carrie, for joining us. I'm sure everybody found it hugely beneficial. You were absolutely amazing. I so appreciate you coming on. Ladies, make sure you're following us on all the places, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We're also on YouTube if you prefer to watch instead of listen. The website is www.lifeafterkids.com. And don't forget, the Life After Kids book is available for pre-order. And if you order it now, you get all the free bonuses that come with it. You can find that at lifeafterkids.com/book. Thanks again, Dr. Carrie. I hope we can have you back on again so we can talk some more.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. And absolutely.
Take care.